While teachers were prepping for a new school year over the summer, Ontario's new government was also introducing some changes for the province's classrooms, scrapping the 2015 sex ed curriculum, pausing an update of Indigenous curriculum, and putting a renewed focus on improving math scores. Joining us now for more on new directions in the province's classrooms, Annie Kidder, Executive Director, People for Education, Maddie DiMuccio, President at the Society for Quality Education, and Mary Reid, Assistant Professor in the Department of Curriculum, Teaching and Learning at OISE, the Ontario Institute for Studies in Education at the U of T. And we're delighted to welcome all of you here in this first week of our 13th season here on TVO. And I want to start with you, Maddie.
Thank you.
So much focus on the education file throughout the summer was on the government's decision, of course, to scrap the sex ed curriculum, say we're going back to parents for more consultation, and we will revert back to the previous curriculum, ask teachers to teach that. Why so much focus on that in your view?
You know, I think, Steve, that sex ed, and it was and still is, a hot button political issue, and especially in the GTA where Ford delivered those votes that he desperately needed. I think a lot of people who were going to vote Liberal voted for Ford because of the sex ed issue. And
because of his promise to revisit it.
I believe that. And I still think he's using it as a hot button issue because we hear about it over and over and over again. The media loves to talk about it. On a personal level, do I think it's overblown? Absolutely. You know, we as Society for Quality Education advocate for a better public education. There's so much more that encompasses that than just sex education.
Having said that, are you glad he's doing this?
I think he needs to do it for political reasons. I think it's going to keep him popular. So he's sort of delivering on his promises, if you follow that in the political way. But you know, on a real level, though, I think that he risks a lot of alienation. He's really put a lot of fire. A lot of fuel on the fire, and he's, you know, getting the teachers really angry. He's getting them together, and they're very powerful unions. So I think it's a risk.
Annie, we understand the political imperatives of Premier Ford revisiting this issue. What about the policy reasons for doing so? Are they advisable as well?
Well, I think that, you know, for me, it comes down to a problem that's existing in the world in many ways right now, which is how we kind of balance evidence and what, you know, the proverbial we know in terms of what's important, how things work, and the need for engaging people in something like public education. And you know, there is a concern that we're moving away from evidence and politics is taking over. And I think it's always a problem in education. Every government, Liberal, Conservative, NDP, always comes in and goes, you know, what can we change instantly? How can we kind of make our mark? And it's unfortunate, I think, that education has so much politics in it. So there's a kind of tendency to swing with the political weather and forget, you know, there is evidence. We've spent the last few years working with experts from across Canada and with parents and with teachers on what are the most essential competencies that all kids need throughout curriculum. Health competencies are among those. But to me, it comes down to that. Like, let's try and remember how important evidence is and make sure that it's part of that conversation.
Mary Reid, your view on the advisability of doing this?
It's important to have a health curriculum that promotes the safety and well-being of all students. And in my opinion, the repeal of the 2015 health curriculum is irresponsible, downright irresponsible, because it undermines the safety and well-being of Ontario students.
What about the notion that the Premier said before he was Premier that he was going to do it? He can't very well not do it once he's promised to do it, can he?
I think he could do it in a much more positive way. You know, building on what is existing already. Like Annie said, there's so much evidence that was already contributed to that curriculum. There was consultation. And he didn't have to make this promise because we now have students in the classroom that are at risk with their mental health. This curriculum is missing some critical pieces, such as consent, such as same-sex relationships, such as gender identity.
These things will now not be taught, in your view?
They're not, I don't know, because the interim curriculum seems a huge critical voice that is missing in the interim curriculum are voices and identities of LGBT communities. And they are the most vulnerable sometimes in our classrooms.
We are really, I guess let's take a few moments here and just get a better understanding of when the province says to teachers, do this, what do teachers actually do? I want to get a better sense of that. And to that end, Let's give this example in the Peel District School Board, where the Director of Education, Peter Joshua, said that topics that you've just mentioned, gender identity, for example, are not to be taught in the elementary years until there are official lesson plans that come down from Queen's Park as a result of this consultation that's going on, but that teachers should, quote unquote, embed this topic into all curricular areas. I mean, I don't even know where to begin, but how do you do that?
There's so much gray area, but basically we have curriculum documents that are policy documents. So that dictates the what teachers have to teach. The how is left up to the teachers because there's a lot of professional autonomy. And although these really important topics such as consent and same-sex relationships and gender identity, they're not explicitly laid out in the interim health curriculum, it could be taught up to the discretion of the teacher who bases their lessons on the needs of students, the safety of students, and it could be perhaps taught, embedded, and integrated in other subject areas, such as media literacy.
So a teacher's individual judgment is still going to be very crucial going forward. Have I got that right?
Oh, yes, and it always is. But I think that the other part of this is understanding, which most of us don't, including me, you know, what actually curriculum is and how it actually works. And nobody's sending down lesson plans. I think that is really important. Teachers make lesson plans. But I think that the thing, again, that, you know, that is important in this conversation is that pulling one piece of curriculum out of all of the curriculum that kids are taught is problematic, and that the understanding of the importance of supporting all of these different, so understanding what social emotional skills are, and you can teach those in all the curriculum, and part of those social emotional skills are building healthy relationships, understanding, you know, your sense of power and your own voice, and consent can be part of that. So consent isn't a thing that only exists in health curriculum. It actually, you know, if you think of, let's take kindergarten, for example, teaching kids all of those social emotional skills, or even within creativity and citizenship that go throughout the curriculum is important. So it is easy, and again, I agree with you, there is a love of us all talking. It's like, let's talk about sex, that's really exciting. But in fact, you know, these are competencies and skills that are throughout the curriculum, and it's not, you know, necessary that nobody's forbidden these subjects to be brought up. There is, you know, we're going to change the health curriculum, maybe, and there are other really important parts of the health curriculum in terms of, you know, risk-taking, healthy behavior, food, sleep. There's lots of other stuff in the health curriculum. So there's nothing wrong with all of the curriculum needs to be looked at, and I think even the old government said we got to look at all the curriculum. But I think it is really true that it's not. This doesn't mean that none of these words will be spoken now for the next year.
But I want to get your advice on this, Maddie, because if you're a teacher right now who's just begun the new school year, and you see Queen's Park saying we're going to review this whole sex ed thing. You see the director of education of whatever school board you happen to work for saying, use your best judgment to sort of get it into other aspects, but be very careful on, what do you do?
Well, first of all, I do agree with Mary. The sex ed curriculum, just like most curriculums, are scripted. And so teachers sort of use that and they sort of take from that and they don't always cover the whole thing. But I would like to offer a different perspective because we hear in the media a lot of these teachers are very outraged about Doug Ford's directive. However, I speak to a lot of teachers, and what we don't realize is that a lot of teachers are quite modest. Frankly, they're afraid to approach that subject because it's such a hot political issue right now. We also have thrown in a lot of the gender issues, the political ideologies. A lot of parents are kind of worried, and I think the teachers are getting that feedback, and they're worried too. So I think we need to realize that, in my opinion, I think that the majority of teachers are actually sort of afraid to broach the subject. For example, in the U.S., teachers really stay away from issues like gender identity and that sort of thing because they don't want to get sued. You know, if they say the wrong thing, if a young student comes up to that teacher and says, you know, I think I'd like to talk to somebody about you know what I'm going through, a lot of teachers are afraid to do that. In the U.S., they get sued for if they say the wrong thing, and I think a lot of Canadian teachers Ontario teachers are sort of feeling that same pressure, whereas it's not really my job to be doing this. The onus is on me to sort of, I don't want to use the word to play therapist, but essentially you have an issue now with a student and there's a lot of pressure, public pressure, especially from the Wynne government. I will have to say this, she really used this as a big hot topic herself. And I think a lot of teachers were feeling very intimidated and thinking, you know what? I don't know if I want to get into this. I think I want to just stick with academics. My whole position is to stick with academics. I agree with Mary and Annie that we need to have a health curriculum, and certainly a lot of the social issues with the digital age we need to teach kids, but I think that we need to draw a line, and I think that's where parents are upset.
How about the notion, Annie, that the new government of Ontario has set up a kind of a hotline where if you as a parent or as a student are concerned about the nature of the teaching that goes on in your child's classroom, you can call this hotline and lodge a complaint. What do we think of that?
Again, I think this goes back to the balance between evidence and, people's opinion. I have lots of opinions. I'm a parent. I am not an expert in education, in any way, shape, or form. And I think that, keeping those two apart is really important. I think to respond to Maddie and the hotline, I think that there are things that you teach at home. There are values in families that are incredibly important to families. They can be religious values, they can be values about sex, sexuality, and they are important that, that you are supporting those values in your kids. It's it's a very important part of bringing up kids. So I could believe, for instance, that I go to church. I believe God created the world, as it is now, and I want that is a value in my family, and it's very important to me. But they're not going to get taught that at school. They're going to get taught evolution at school. And I think that then at home, the other sort of skill you can build in your kid is understanding some people, people will teach you this. This is how we want you to handle this particular part. But making this a war with the school system or making it, how do you fight for whatever, we all have different beliefs and different systems of values at home. How do I make my opinion count more than others within the school system is problematic. And I think, and we've seen it everywhere. Parents have I have very strong opinions, but they're opinions, and there's a difference between an opinion and evidence. But it is important that we're listening to parents. It's really important that parents have the information that they need. I'm going to, take up a non-controversial subject. There are report cards. They have learning skills on them. Even the math part of report cards, I always found has 5 different marks in it. I never knew what they meant. But understanding what are these learning skills things, and are they important, and can I support them at home? So deepening the understanding and better communication with parents so that and understanding where parents aren't clear, that's important. But setting it up as a kind of oppositional, no matter what the evidence says, this is what I believe and this is what I want changed, that is problematic in the public education system.
Mary, I have heard this new device described as a hotline for parents to make their views heard. I have heard the opposition refer to it as a snitch line, where parents can go snitch on teachers that they don't care for. What do you think is more accurate?
It's a snitch line. It puts teachers in really difficult situations. Teachers have a moral obligation to make sure that their classrooms are safe and that all identities feel included, and the 2015 health curriculum was working in that direction. And with the interim curriculum, it's missing out on critical pieces in which teachers don't have the authority to be able to teach about the diversity and the valuing of all diverse identities.
Well, I'll tell you, I may not talk to as many teachers as Maddie does, but the teachers I have talked to have all said to me, Queen's Park can say whatever they want. I'm going to use my best judgment and teach what I feel is right.
Absolutely, and I totally agree. And
you think that's the way to go?
I think that's the way to go. And unfortunately, I think some teachers will be afraid, though. They will be afraid to talk about critical issues with in their classrooms.
What do you think of the hotline/snitch line?
Well, I mean, the government calls it a hotline, and the public calls it a snitch line, because really that's what it is. Look, I speak to teachers, as you said. One of the interesting conversations I had, the teachers are upset about this, absolutely. What does it mean, a snitch, or, I'll use the word hotline. What does that mean? That, can a grade 7 or 8 student complain about a a teacher, because let's face it, we've got radar teachers on the internet. They're going to use that as a great opportunity,
so you can't tell
right? It's anonymous,
Yeah.
exactly. So I think that it's very much a symbolic measure from Doug Ford's government, because I think that the education file, really does need to be looked at, and there's a lot of revamping. But I think that there's no means. What's the means to the end here? I mean,
well, the idea is to give parents a bigger voice. At least
right,
that's what they say.
But what will that accomplish?
Reason?
So we're going to have. First of all, can you imagine the resources and money that will be needed to even run such a line like that? And again, let's be accountable. What's going to happen out of this? I mean, are the teachers going to be? Are they going to be confronted? Are they going to be disciplined? Now, touching on another question you asked, what do teachers, are they going to just go ahead and teach the curriculum anyways? My own opinion, I actually disagree with Mary. I believe staunchly, teachers are civil servants. They're paid by the public, and they are told, they might not like to be told what to do by their employer, but they have to do it. And I think when I said earlier that we're sort of overdoing this whole sex ed issue, it's on both sides. The Doug Ford people are overdoing it in the sense that it's such this huge topic, it's so important in school. And the people that demand to have it taught are also overdoing it as though the sky is going to fall. Look, we are going to be taught a sex ed curriculum. This is just political what Doug Ford is doing. I think he should have been more prepared for it. I think he should have had something in place. Steve, as you know, I've been politically involved with the PC party in the past, and I know they had a committee on this. They've had years to work on the education file, certainly on the sex ed curriculum, because that's been in the news since 2000 and when did Patrick Brown run? I mean, that's been in the news.
2013.
Exactly.
No, 15.
Well, 2015.
15.
So, we've got 3 years. Where's the material? I mean, what did this committee do to put something together? And quite frankly, I'm not only shocked, but I'm disappointed. And I think all of us on this panel are probably disappointed to know, we have opposition parties, and we rely on those opposition parties to have a plan. And then when they win government, they should be ready to go. But we've seen a lot of sort of discombobulation here with a lot of the decisions being made on the sex ed file. Why would you repeal it when you can just, maybe tweak a few things? And when I say tweak a few things, I think the biggest concern are the age of discussion in sexual topics. I think a lot of parents don't want to have their grade 1 and 2 kids learn about those things.
Too much too early.
Too much too early.
I've heard that before. Can I get you to just comment on the notion that teachers are in effect civil servants and that they ought to do what they're told?
Teachers they do have policy documents that they have to follow. Those expectations in the curriculum documents, they have to. There's no choice. However, there's a professional autonomy that they do have, and it's to meet the needs of their students. That's their priority. So if it means that they're going to have to talk about some discussions in the health curriculum that may not necessarily be in the interim curriculum, in order to ensure the safety of their students, then they will be doing that.
But Mary, if I can just jump in here, when we look at the sex ed curriculum from 2015 that Kathleen Wynne implemented, if we look at it before that, we didn't have students failing. We didn't have students, demanding to be taught this. This is something that was really largely based on her own initiative.
It was,
and good to,
well,
good
it
for
actually
her.
came before.
Well, but fine.
That,
but there was a lot of that stuff that was thrown in that a lot of parents are against, like a lot of the gender identity issues that people are very much against. That was something Kathleen Wynne herself championed. And I remember when she announced it, she had 2 young girls in front of her, and she made a big hoopla over it, which is fine. I'm not, that's her thing. But what I'm saying is that it's not like things were really, really bad before that. And so can we make it better? Absolutely. And believe me, I agree with you. I don't think it should have been repealed the way it was. I think if they were better prepared, they would have maybe tweaked a few things, but
Sounds like you're saying there's a pendulum here. The pendulum's gone too
and
far one way.
I think to that point, I think here we are now. We've spent half our time talking about the sex ed curriculum, but it's not an emergency right now, nor was it before. There are so many other huge
like
things
math.
going on in education.
That's a great segue. Like
That's
math.
a great intro.
Mary says, like math, and let's just grab that segue and go
Not
with
to
it right
say
now.
health curriculum is not important, but
it is important, but so are good math scores, as everybody knows.
Yes.
I would like to know, well, you've started us off here, so get into it. How concerned are you about the fact that the math scores in our EQAO, I hate acronyms,
Education Quality and Accountability
Office. Thank you, Annie. That's why you get invited back all the time.
I know my acronyms.
You know what the acronyms stand for. How concerned are you that they're going in the wrong direction, those scores?
I'm really concerned. This has been a trending pattern downwards for the last 8 to 9 years. And I'm really concerned because now we have a government that is creating this divisiveness about discovery math versus fluency and operational fluency. Like you have to be on either camp. But in fact, you really want a balanced approach. That is the key to what we want. And you know, we've seen the pendulum swing to, you know, discovery math came about from research, lots of research in the 1990s.
For those who didn't take it or don't have a kid in school right now, what is that? It's
a misnomer, but
yeah, because it sounds like kind of airy-fairy.
Yeah,
sorry,
exactly. You're right.
Discovery. I'm going to discover
sounds like
math.
a lofty.
Exactly.
Yes,
or it's like 2 + 2 doesn't equal 4.
It
still does, though,
discovery
right?
math actually.
So.
It was based on research from Constance Camy, who discovered that when she was working with students who only memorized algorithms, young children, grades 1, 2, and 3. What happened was the consequences were detrimental. They developed misconceptions about place value, about quantity, and they were only focused on the procedures and the steps, and it compromised their number sense. And what she found was when students were allowed to have an inquiry-based approach, where they were permitted to use counters and collaborate and problem solve and make meaning of the numbers, that the post-test results between the two groups, amongst all her studies, found that the students who did inquiry math significantly did way better than the students who did rote memorization. So she suggested that we hold off on the teaching of memorization and the direct teaching of algorithms with young children because they're not developmentally ready for it yet.
Can I tell you what the Premier had to say about that?
Yeah, I know. He says that to scrap discovery math and bring in proven methods. Well, the empirical research shows...
Let's let him speak for itself. Sheldon, you got that clip standing by? If so, fire away.
Kids used to learn math by doing things like memorizing a multiplication table, and it worked. Kathleen Wynne scrapped that. Instead, our kids are left with experimental discovery math. That hardly teaches math at all. Instead, everyone gets a participation ribbon.
That was Doug Ford on the hustings during the election campaign. Okay, let's go around on this. You want to finish up on that?
Memorization alone is not a proven method. It is ineffective and unsustainable. I do agree we need fluency. Our students need to be procedurally fluent. They need to have procedural knowledge. The NCTM, which is the National Council for Teachers of Mathematics, another acronym for you, Steve, they talk about when they came out with the reform math standards, they talk about a balanced approach, that the fluency and the understanding of arithmetic with automatic recall, it is a means to an end. In essence, we want students to be amazing problem solvers because that's what mathematicians do. And without that fluency, sometimes that can get in the way to become problem solvers.
Okay, Annie, your view on how mortified we ought to be that the math scores are going in the wrong direction and how to solve it.
I don't think we need to be mortified, but we definitely need to be concerned. You know, there are scores there. It's data. We should use it. It's really, really important. So we can't just go, yeah, whatever. I think that I will use my poor child, who I always use in this example, who has just gone back to university again, because she loves going to school. But she takes advanced statistics. She is brilliant at that, but she does not know her times tables. That's not evidence. That's just one anecdote.
How can you be an expert at statistics and not know your times tables?
Because she got a deep understanding of all of the concepts. Now, I am not saying I don't think she should know her times tables, but I think that this is another example of creating a kind of polarized debate where I shouldn't be having it. Mary should be having it, not me. I do know my times tables, but I'm not an expert on math. And it's bringing into education hot button issues, sex, math are two of them, and then stopping us from having a better conversation that looks at education all across and goes, are we preparing kids for the future in all ways? Are we understanding, that they're going to have 25 different jobs and that we need to build in competencies and skills that everybody is saying they need to be engaged citizens? assessments to be healthy, which a lot of them aren't, so that this ends up too kind of narrowing, kind of cherry picking one thing out of all of the incredible things that our schools need to be doing for our kids. But by saying that, I am not saying it's not important. It is really important we look at it and we think about teachers and their level of comfort in it. We have to think about a lot of other aspects of it.
We do need to look at the demographics of our teachers because that sometimes gives some information.
What is that a reference to?
So we have EQAO data that shows that, based on the survey data that the teachers fill out, that we have 80% of grade 6 teachers and about 83% of grade 2 teachers who have never taken a formal math course in their undergrad, for example.
Oh,
yes. in undergrad, in university, okay, before they attended their Bachelor of Education. Not to say that you need a math degree to be excellent math teachers. No, because I know amazing math teachers who don't have the math degree or a math specialist. But we had such a huge focus on literacy, you know, years ago, and teachers didn't have to overcome a confidence issue regarding literacy because a lot of our teachers come from liberal arts backgrounds and humanities backgrounds. So the teaching of reading and writing, they felt confident about. But with mathematics, the evidence shows there is more anxiety. And we have to support our teachers, invest in their professional development. And I have no doubt that we will move in a direction that will support teachers and ensure that it's based on evidence and the research and ensuring that we do need that balance, that memorization without meaning is going to be like Teflon. It's just going to not stick. It is going to be ineffective.
What's 7 times 6?
7 times 6 is 42.
Okay,
but
so it's stuck with you.
No, but only that sticks, not the rest of it. Yeah.
I didn't know it completely until I thought, okay, I know what 7 times 7 is, 49. That's automaticity. Steve, that's automaticity. There's a difference between automaticity and memorization. When you memorize without understanding, it is short-lived, and you will forget it as soon as you lose it. But with automaticity, you are flexible with the numbers. You have meaning with the numbers. You can strategize.
This is a math teacher.
Wow.
He loves math.
This is good stuff. Okay, Maddie.
So that's what we want in our
kids. I hope you're not going to test me with a
It's like, oh no, so I can never do that.
You know, I think it's really, I mean, I saw the clip that you played, and I think what I'm seeing is common in our legislators. They really don't understand what discovery math is, and they don't understand, I think they're very simplistic in the way that they're looking at this. So Mary's right. I mean, there has to be a deeper understanding. You have to have a fundamental basis in order to do discovery math. That fundamental basis, though, is created in the younger years. And your early grade years will determine the success of a student when it comes to math. Now, do I believe in the traditional methods that Doug Ford is talking about? Absolutely. SQE has been a huge proponent on that. But what I'm seeing here is a lot of teachers, they've changed a lot of the curriculum in kindergarten. A few years ago, they changed it. They made it more of a play-based, okay? So now, we're getting kids in grade 1 and 2 that don't even know how to hold a pencil. They don't know how to write their name. And discovery math is very much based on literary skills. So that's sliding down, and I think that's a reflection of our EQAO test. The other thing I wanted to comment on is that, with teaching rote skills in math, we have jump math, we have Kumon, they really, really focus on those things. It's not sexy, it's not fun, it's horrible. I remember as a kid, my teacher had the chalkboard, and she had, we have to learn the times table, she had the whole chart. It was awful, it was painful. But we have that fundamental ability, then we start to teach discovery math. So once those students learn those basics, okay, and again, you do it in the early years. We learned those things in grade 1. Once they have that, then they can start to teach the love of math. That's my opinion, okay? A lot of this, this fear of math that Mary touches on, she's absolutely right, and I do think it's a crisis. I mean, I do think it's worse than what than what Annie says. It's not as bad, but I think it is.
Let me pick up on that, because Annie, you and I will both remember that when Kathleen Wynne was the premier, she also feared that our math teachers in our schools were not up to the task of teaching math as well as they ought to be. And I think they have 25 million bucks or something like that? 60 million bucks, okay. You always remember the numbers better than me. 60 million bucks to teach math teachers to teach better. And yet, in spite of that investment, the numbers are still going down.
But I think that you have to look at things in the long term, and you have to understand we have to listen to people who are teaching teachers before they come in. And I also don't want to blame this all on teachers. There has been, the focus changes, it switches around. There is a tendency for that kind of like, let's swing back the other way. But it is important that we're looking all the way back to the beginning. What's important in terms of teacher education? I mean, I think it's important when we look at the math scores, in my, shallow understanding of statistics, they are changing and they are going down. And the teaching actually hasn't changed. So what are the other kind of societal factors? How much is it parents' fault that the math scores are going down? Or how much is society not valuing, to your point? I'm not sure about making them hate math first and then love it, but I think I would argue with that. But I think there is a kind of sense in society.
But Mary, sorry, Annie, sorry,
yeah,
did I just say Mary?
Totally
sorry, my brain is discombobulated today. I disagree with you. I mean, I have 3 boys. Okay, they're 2 of them are in high school. We get problems, and my husband's a whiz at math. He gets problems. He doesn't understand them. We have to go on Google, on YouTube, to figure out what exactly. This is a new concept of doing math.
So I disagree with this one.
When I was in high school, it wasn't that complicated. Now they want the student to really I understand they want to they want the student to explain in writing how they got to that problem, but not all students can do that.
But I think
certainly my son cannot, but yet he's an A+ student in math.
But I think what's important, and again, it goes down to balance, and I don't think we all agree too much. I don't think any of us are saying go all the way in one direction, but I think about something like problem solving, for instance, that one of the other things that's important is why we need to be looking at all the curriculum, including math, is understanding how and where those problem-solving skills are built.
Absolutely.
So how are we building persistence? How are we? Because you're right, some parts of school it's hard. Some of it's maybe even a little bit boring, and you have to do it anyway. But problem-solving is a perfect example of how are you building that through play-based learning. Early on, how are you building those problem-solving skills in social studies, in science, in reading and writing, and that we're not, and I think picking it out of math is a problem, but I think that you're right, we have to make sure if kids are hitting high school and they don't have the complex problem-solving skills that they're going to need in the world, because it is very complex, we have to be looking right back at the beginning.
We have to look at
I'm down to my last minute. You got it, Mary.
Let's look at our last minute. Wow, that was fast. Let's look at our PISA
Too much
skills.
time on sex. There you go.
Our PISA results, which are the International Student Assessment results, show that our students do really well with level 1 and 2 questions. They are your basic regurgitation of facts. They don't do well in level 5 and 6, which are complex problems. We need more problem solving, and we need to create a disposition in classrooms for our students so that they can engage in patient problem solving and embrace productive struggle. That's what we want. And that's that productive. And we want students to love math and to see the joy in math and to see the beauty in math. And that happens with play-based. It's empirical research that shows that, and that nothing can deny that empirical evidence-based research.
What's 8 times 5?
Wow. What do you think
40.
it is?
I hope it's 40 still.
Okay.
I hope it's still 40.
5 times tables are the easiest.
There we go.
Because of the patterns of
Maddie
5.
DiMuccio from the Society for Quality Education, Annie Kidder from People for Education, Mary Reed from OISE. Really good of all of you to come into TVO tonight. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
The Agenda with Steve Paikin is brought to you by the Chartered Professional Accountants of Ontario, helping businesses stay on the right side of change with strategic thinking, insightful decisions, and business leadership. Are you on the right side of change? Ask an Ontario CPA.